Chapters are attitude at the beginning of a difficult task which, more than anything else, will affect its successful outcome. William James. Attitude is a psychological tendency that is expressed by evaluating a particular entity with some degree of favor or disfavor. And Chaikin. You can often change your circumstances by changing your attitude. Eleanor Roosevelt. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. Winston Churchill. Introduction. Attitude is an evaluation people make towards persons, objects, ideas or events. For e.g., an attitude of reverence towards religion makes one follow its doctrine. Attitudes are the perspectives on a situation based upon the values held by a person or organization. It is a psychological tendency of evaluating a particular object either in favor or disfavor. Characteristics of attitude. Psychological construct. Attitude is a mental evaluation and predisposition. Learned and acquired. Attitudes are acquired through socialization. Relatively stable. Attitudes are enduring and resistant to change. Evaluation and judgment. Attitudes involve positive or negative appraisal. Influence behavior. Attitudes shape and predict behavior. Cognitive, affective, and behavioral components. Attitudes have thoughts, emotions, and actions. Subjective. Attitudes vary from person to person. Expressive and communicative. Attitudes are expressed through cues. Context dependent. Attitudes can vary in different situations. Can be influenced and changed. Attitudes can be influenced and modified. Structure components of attitude. Attitude is made up of three main components: cognitive, affective, and behavioral. 1. Cognitive. This component of attitude involves our thoughts and beliefs about something or someone. It's based on the information we have gathered and our understanding of it. We form judgments and opinions based on what we know. For example, if someone believes that snakes are dangerous, it means they have a cognitive attitude towards snakes based on their knowledge or information. 2. Affective. The affective component of attitude deals with our emotions and feelings towards something or someone. It's how we feel about a particular object, person, issue, or event. It can include emotions like fear, hate, pleasure, or even love. For example, if someone is scared of spiders, it means they have an affective attitude of fear towards spiders. 3. Behavioral. The behavioral component of attitude is about how our attitude influences our behavior or actions. It's the way we tend to act or behave based on our attitude. For example, if someone has a fear of snakes, their behavioral attitude will be to run away when they see a snake. Example. 31. Prahaar redefined 3.0. Portugal's football player Ronaldo sat down for his first pre-match press conference of the tournament before Portugal's clash with Hungary, and noticed that 2 bottles of Coca-Cola were sitting directly in front of him. He promptly removed the soft drinks from the view of the cameras and replaced them with a water bottle. In the given example, the cognitive component is the knowledge of Ronaldo that Coca-Cola is bad for health. The affective component is the feeling of disgust towards Coca-Cola, and the behavioral component is the removal of the Coca-Cola bottles. Formation of attitude. The following theories are used to explain the formation of attitude. 1. Classical or Pavlovian conditioning. It involves pairing a previously neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus to elicit conditioned response. Ivan Pavlov discovered classical conditioning. He paired previously neutral stimulus, sound of bell, which did not elicit any response from dogs, with unconditioned stimulus, dog's food, to elicit conditioned response in dogs. Because of the conditioned response, dogs produced saliva just by ringing bells. Example, citizens develop a positive attitude towards civil servants who consistently work for the betterment of people. 2. Instrumental conditioning. According to this theory, positive outcomes strengthen behaviors while negative outcomes suppress them. Example, a person who is continuously ostracized for smoking, eventually will quit smoking by developing a negative attitude towards it. 3. Observational learning. This theory says that a person modifies his behavior thought by observing the rewards or punishments that others get. Example, best employee awards are given in companies so as to change the attitude of the employees. 4. Genetic factors. It plays an important role in shaping and developing attitude toward anything or entity. Example, for certain food is more influenced by genetic factors. 5. Culture. Culture exerts enormous influence on an individual. Culture in itself includes religion, tradition, customs, prohibitions, rewards and sanctions. Example, Maria's cultural upbringing instilled in her a strong sense of respect for elders, shaping her behavior to prioritize their opinions and seek their guidance in decision-making. Functions of attitude. Following are the main functions of attitude. 32. Prahaar redefined 3.0. Ethics. Utilitarian instrumental function. Utilitarian attitude leads to behavior that optimizes one's interest. Positive attitude towards objects that are associated with rewards, and negative attitude towards those associated with punishment. Example, awards such as Bharat Ratna, Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan etc. are bestowed by the government to develop a positive attitude in the citizens towards their respective works and social service. Knowledge function. It enables one to understand the environment and be consistent in one's ideas and thinking. It desires for a predictable, stable world. Example, a person avoids visiting countries like Syria as he has knowledge that his life will be in danger there. Ego defensive function. It protects an individual from acknowledging the basic truths about himself or harsh realities of life. It helps an individual to psychologically isolate him from groups perceived as hostile or threatening. Example, you may not be able to play football like Messi. Instead of accepting this reality, you can claim that you don't like football to maintain your self-image. Value expressive function. It helps to demonstrate one's self-image to others. It expresses our basic values. It helps in securing social approval for an individual. Example, standing in solidarity with victims of injustice, even if one is not directly related to it, serves the value expressive function. Function of decision making. Our decisions are based on how we evaluate situations. Attitude facilitates decision making. Example, attitude of alleviating poverty. Self-awareness function. Attitudes can help people to approach things that are beneficial to them and avoid things that are harmful to them. Example, Sarah's positive attitude towards healthy eating leads her to choose nutritious foods and avoid harmful dietary habits. Social adjustment function. Attitudes help us in social adjustments. Attitudes help us in simplifying our perception about the world and make it more manageable to us. Example, Michael's open-minded attitude allows him to adapt to diverse cultural perspectives, facilitating social interactions and fostering understanding in a globalized world. Social identity function. It helps in displaying the information of attitude of an individual to others. Example, celebrating Independence Day demonstrates the patriotic image to others. Influence of attitude on behavior. Attitude is defined as tendencies to behave in certain ways in social situations. But most recent researchers have found that not always people behave according to their attitude, i.e. there is mismatch between attitude and expected behavior. Attitude is a personal trait, whereas behavior is a social trait. Difference between attitude and behavior. 33. Prahaar redefined 3.0, ethic. Attitude behavior. Attitude is an internal component of our cognition, knowledge or information. Attitude refers to a person's mental view, regarding the way he/she thinks or feels about someone or something. It is more personal. A person's attitude is mainly based on the experiences gained by him during the course of his life and observations. Attitude reflects one's emotions, opinions and thoughts. Factors like environment, experiences, and moral values mainly influence attitudes. Example, someone can have an attitude of showing sympathy to poor people. Behavior is the manifestation or exhibition of such an attitude. Behavior implies the actions and conduct of an individual or group towards other persons. It is more social. The behavior of a person is based on the situation and circumstances. Behavior reflects one's attitude as actions are the reflection of our thoughts. Attitudes, character traits, biological factors like endocrine and nervous responses influence our behavior. Example, this belief is an attitude and can be shown in behavior by practicing compassion by helping poor people. Categories of attitude. Explicit attitude and implicit attitude. Explicit attitude, also referred to as the self-reported attitude. This attitude is embedded in our conscious cognition, or in simple words, the person involved is aware of his/her attitude. Implicit attitude, mostly governed by past memories, this attitude is embedded in our unconscious cognition. It arises unintentionally due to our experiences. Explicit attitude. Implicit attitude. A person is aware of his attitudes. A person is unaware of implicit beliefs. It is formed consciously. It is a subconscious attitude. It is less spontaneous. It is more spontaneous. It reflects values, beliefs and desired responses. It reflects experiences based on social conditioning. It is easy to self-report. It is usually unknown to us. Example, positive attitude towards a product which was manufactured in an environment-friendly manner. Example, positive attitude towards products used by parents during childhood days. Opinion and attitude. It is an individual's thought or belief about something, whether good or bad. It can vary from person to person. 34. Prahaar redefined 3.0, ethics. Example, there are conflicting opinions on the possession of nuclear weapons, historical responsibility of climate change in the Western and Eastern world. Opinion. Attitude. It is the expression of judgment. It is a predisposition to act in a certain way. It is restricted to verbal expression, spoken or written. Attitude is inferred from both verbal and non-verbal expressions. It may or may not be based on facts or knowledge. It is generated from own belief system. Opinion is generally advisable in nature to others. It is related to more to self-like or dislike towards person, place, environment, etc. Example, an author expressing positive opinion on democracy through an article. Example, the author having positive attitude about democracy by studying various forms of government. Belief and attitude. It is being certain about something that exists or is true. Example, theists believe in the existence of God while atheists deny it. Belief. Attitude. It is an idea that a person holds as true. It is a mental disposition that results in a particular behavior. It can arise from past experience, cultural and societal norms or education. It arises out of values and beliefs we hold internally. Changing belief can change attitude. Changing attitude can also lead to change in belief. Example, a person may have belief in a particular God. Example, the person will regularly pay obeisance to that God. Value and attitude. Values are deeply held beliefs and principles that guide individuals' behaviors and decision-making, reflecting what is considered important and desirable in life. Example, a person's value of honesty compels him to always speak the truth, even when it is difficult or uncomfortable. Value. Attitude. It helps to guide our behavior. It is the response that is the result of our values. It helps in deciding what is right and wrong. It is our likes, dislikes for things, people and objects. These are more or less permanent in nature. Attitudes are changeable with favorable experiences. They represent a single belief that guides actions and judgment across objects and situations. They represent several beliefs focused on a specific object or situation. It refers to personal belief or principles that guide behaviors and decision-making. It refers to personal feeling, negative, positive, or neutral feeling, about persons, object, situation, or Environment showcase a particular person's moral ethics and his/her overall character. Highlight a person's behavior through the personality. It is derived from social and cultural conventions. It is more of a personal experience. Example, a civil servant possessing the value of openness. Example, the civil servant will have a positive attitude towards the RTI Act. Similarity between value and attitudes. Values and attitudes are two important variables influencing the cognitive process and behavior. They are learned and acquired essentially from the same sources. They endure and are resistant to change. They have a reciprocal influence and are used interchangeably. 35. Prahaar redefined 3.0. Ethic. Moral attitude. It is based on the moral conviction of what is right and wrong. It is associated with strong emotions. They are the foundation of a moral life. So, if an individual is devoid of these attitudes, his/her life will be devoid of morality, and if at all they will be present, it would be accidental and therefore superficial and inconsistent. Moral attitudes are inclusive of moral judgments, right and wrong, and depict the values of a person. O Socrates and Plato had moral attitudes in which they believed that it is better to suffer injustice than to do injustice. O Gandhiji's fundamental belief in non-violence as a tool to combat injustice. Not all attitudes are concerned with morality. O example, my attitude towards snakes has nothing to do with morality. But my attitude towards democracy will have moral undertones. Activities like altruism, volunteerism, social service, etc. emanate from a moral attitude. On the negative side, moral attitudes can be used to justify violent acts of terrorism. It is shaped by family, society, religion, education, etc. O example, positive attitude for honor killing is justified on the grounds of saving the pride of the family. Positive attitude towards live-in relationships is justified on the grounds of individuality and freedom. Qualities of moral attitude. Moral attitude is neither permanent nor universal. There are many factors which shape moral attitudes. They are reverence. It is the attitude of great respect towards others. It is important in realizing justice towards others, in consideration for the rights of another, in limiting one's lust for power. The irreverent and impertinent man cannot submit to authority or abnegate himself. Faithfulness. It is the virtue of remaining loyal to someone or something and putting this loyalty into consistent practice. The more faithful and consistent a person is, the more substantial he is and the more capable he will be of becoming a vessel of moral values. Veracity. It implies truthfulness, fidelity or constancy, and the awareness of responsibility. A person who lacks truthfulness is crippled in his personality. Goodness. It flows from the conscious response of love. It is the basic attitude which helps in practicing benevolence and generosity. Awareness of responsibility. A person with awareness of responsibility is one who has assimilated values in him/herself. So, there is recognition of the presence of higher power and that should underpin decision making. This leads to inquiry making before decision making and holding forth in face of fear or temptations. Motivation for altruism. It motivates a person towards altruism, volunteerism and social service. Attached with strong emotions, moral attitude is tied up with strong emotions. Hence, it prevents deviant behavior among normal people due to fear of social exclusion. Example, rapes, child molestation, etc. 36. Prahaar redefined implication of moral attitudes. Positive implications, negative implications. Tied up with strong emotions. Hence prevents deviant behaviors due to fear of social ostracization. Child molestation, incest. People can use it to justify violence behavior and lunacy, and still society will accept it because moral attitude is strong emotions. Example, motivates a person towards riots, genocide and terrorism to justify religious, regional issues. Motivates a person towards altruism, volunteerism, social service. Since moral attitude is tied with strong emotions, people don't get along with those who don't share their moral attitude. X. Intolerance. Social attitude. It is the outlook of a person towards social entities like society, culture, organizations, institutions, etc. It is a behavior pattern, a conditioned response or anticipatory tendency towards a social stimulus. It is shaped by personal experiences and observations. It can be learned predispositions. For example, attitude of mainstream society towards the LGBTQ community. Attitude towards the weaker sections. A positive attitude towards poverty, deprivation, discrimination, etc. implies empathy and caring nature of the person. It signifies compassion towards the weaker and marginalized section. Significance for civil servant. Compassionate attitude. Civil servants must exhibit compassion towards weaker sections, using their power to uplift them. Tolerance. Civil servants should be tolerant to cater to the needs of weaker sections. Familiarity with fundamental rights. Civil servants must be aware of marginalized citizens' fundamental rights. Savodia and Antiochia. Civil servants should work in the spirit of upliftment for all, especially the poorest. Proactive empathy. Civil servants should develop an empathetic approach towards weaker sections. Avoiding stereotypes and prejudices. Civil servants must steer clear of biases and stereotypes in their treatment of individuals. For example, IAS officer Amit Gupta's initiative, Dalia Jalao, helped in the elimination of manual scavenging in Badoin district of UP. Prejudice. It involves prejudgments that are usually negative about members of a group. It is a baseless and often negative attitude towards members of a group. It has a strong influence on how people behave. It is an assumption that is not supported by logic or personal experience. It is primarily dependent on the person's membership in a social group. People holding prejudicial attitudes paint every member of the group as the same. It often translates into discrimination. For examples, prejudice that women can't drive, Dalit don't have merit, Tiavan BILs are unhygienic, etc. How to counter prejudice? Identify cause and source, determine the origin of prejudice to address its root causes. Minimize opportunities for learning prejudices, reduce exposure to biased information or environments that foster prejudice. 37. Prahaar, emphasize broader social identity, encourage considering a wider social identity, such as national or global, rather than narrow group affiliations. Discourage negative behavior, discourage victims of prejudice from responding with negative behavior. Increase intergroup contact, promote interactions between different groups to build trust and reduce mistrust. Education and information dissemination, utilize education and dissemination of information to challenge stereotypes and promote understanding. Holding responsibility, hold individuals accountable for their prejudice to generate internal reflection and conflict. Political attitude. It refers to the attitude of a person or group towards persons, institutions, events, issues related to political ideology. Political attitude is how a person feels about political parties, issues or its ideologies. It is important as people examine issues with particular angles because of their ideological predisposition. Traits which influence our political orientation. 1. Extraversion. It is the energetic approach to the social and material world. It includes traits such as sociability, activity, assertiveness and positive emotionality. 2. Agreeableness. It is a pro-social trait. It includes traits such as altruism, tender-mindedness, trust and modesty. 3. Conscientiousness. It facilitates task and goal-oriented behavior such as thinking before acting, following norms and rules, planning, organizing, etc. 4. Emotional stability. Emotional stability enables the person to develop an integrated and balanced way of perceiving the problems of life. This organizational ability and structured perception helps one to develop reality-oriented thinking, judgment and evaluation ability. It implies even-temperedness. 5. Openness to experience. It describes breadth, depth, originality and complexity of an individual's experiential life. Factors which affect our political ideologies. Religion. Religion shapes the moral attitude which in turn shapes our political attitude. Example, Khilafat movement in pre-independence India. Age. In the general sense, older people are conservative and young people are liberal and as such subscribe to particular ideology. Example, young people are more likely to back political parties who support individuality and freedom. Economic status. Poor people align towards socialist ideology and rich people align towards capitalistic ideology. Example, poor people are more likely to vote for parties who promise them subsidized food, healthcare, education, etc. Family. Children tend to emulate their parents' ideology. Education. Schools' ideology and syllabus plays an important role in shaping the ideology of students. Example, Chinese system of education supports communist ideology and hence they loathe democratic countries. Caste. A person is likely to adopt the ideology which is supported by his caste. Example, elections in India are still fought on caste lines. A politician is more likely to give a ticket to a candidate belonging to a caste which has a majority in a given constituency. Ethnicity. People are often moved by the political ideology which supports their ethnicity. Example, political parties like DMK, Shiromani Akali Dal etc. base their political ideology on ethnicity. Social media. In the age of IT, social media has become a prominent tool of propaganda influencing the political ideologies of the people. Example, political parties use social media handles to attract vote bank. Psychological factor. Some persons are more psychologically adapted to liberalism or conservatism than others. A great tolerance for disorder is a requirement for being a liberal. Significance of political attitude. It determines how people participate in the political process, whom they vote for and what political parties they support. It represents a part of moral attitude. 38. Prahaar. Read. Major types of political ideology. Anarchism. It is against all forms of authority and rejects forceful notions of hierarchy. It calls for abolition of the state, which it holds to be unnecessary and harmful. Authoritarianism. It rejects political pluralism. It employs strong central power to preserve its political status. Communism. The main objective of communists is the formation of society where there is common ownership and means of production are owned by the common masses without the presence of social classes. It is based on Marxist theory. Conservatism. Conservatives feel that men are neither good nor rational. They think that traditional political and cultural institutions are needed to curb men's base and destructive instincts. They feel that social welfare policies are making the recipients dependent upon the government. Liberalism. Liberals aim at protecting and increasing individuals' freedom. They fear government's overreach and hence seek to restrict government's power. Based on the right of individual choice, liberals promote contraception, divorce, abortion and homosexuality. Fascism and Nazism. It is characterized by authoritarianism, ultranationalism, forcible suppression of opposition, rigidity of society and economy. Nazism is a form of fascism with disdain for liberal and parliamentary democracy. Environmentalism. It is concerned with environment protection and improvement of ecology so that both humans and animals can live peacefully in their environment. Feminism. It aims to establish political, economic, personal and social equality of the genders. Identity politics. It is an intellectual and political strategy in which members of a certain race, religion, gender, social class, or other distinguishing characteristics create political agendas based on problems that may have an impact on their lives. Democratic attitude. It gives space to difference of opinion and appreciates participation of stakeholders. In case of public service, it ensures participation of people at various stages of policy formulation and implementation. It refers to those attitudes possessed by civil servants who promote the participation of people in decision making. They promote the delegation of power or authority. In place of rule and regulation, there is more focus on compassion, tolerance and inclusiveness. It has following characteristics: O decisions are based on popular opinion. O views of the majority is right. O maximization of satisfaction of the largest number of people. O supported by elected representatives. Merits demerits: it promotes the active participation of people. So, it will promote and strengthen the democratic institution at the grassroots level. It will make the governance system more accountable as there is active participation of people. There will be more transparency and efficient public service delivery. Decision-making process will become slow and time-consuming. There is difficulty to satisfy every section of society. Sometimes, such an attitude becomes a hindrance to the development process. Example: delay in clearance of mining and industrial development project in scheduled area, because of mandatory consultation under Forest Act 2006. Bureaucratic attitude. Bureaucratic attitude refers to a mindset or approach characterized by excessive adherence to rules, procedures, and formalities within an organizational or institutional setting. This is an attitude strictly adhering to guidelines, rules and regulations. It is based on neutrality, objectivity, impartiality. Characteristics of bureaucratic attitude: decisions strictly based on law, adhering to all rules and procedures, lack of importance to public opinion, antagonize the elected representatives. 39. Prahaar merits demerit. Strict compliance of standard operating procedure. Since consultation with the public is not needed, decisions can be taken quickly. It is easier to fix responsibility for decisions because of the hierarchical decision-making process. Red tapeism, as there is no urgency in achieving targets. They are opposed to changes in the system, leading to stagnation. It is rigid, hence public service delivery may not be effective. Apathy towards common people as rule is supreme and not citizens. Difference between democratic attitude and bureaucratic attitude. Democratic attitude, bureaucratic attitude. It is based on participatory, humanistic and flexible approaches and on bottom-up decision-making. It focuses more on accountability, people participation, transparency, the flexibility of law and public interest. It promotes the active participation of people. Based on the values of transparency, inclusiveness. Example: institutions for public service delivery like banks and PDS shops require democratic attitude. It reflects hierarchical discipline, implicit obedience to orders, top-down instructions, and rule-bound approaches. It focuses on strengthening and adhering to rules procedure, top-down, and centralized decision-making. Apathy towards common people as rule is supreme and not citizens. Based on objectivity and neutrality. Example: areas needing quicker decision-making and there is a question of national security and sovereignty of the country, there is need of bureaucratic attitude. Behavior in Indian society. It is said that behavior in Indian society is difficult to change. It is due to the following reasons. Rigid beliefs and practices. These practices have been shaped over centuries and as such are difficult to change. For example, toilets are not constructed in the house as it is considered clean. Culture. The cultural evil has perpetuated the hierarchical system. Stereotypes and prejudices, such as subjugation of women in the family. Resistance. Lack of emotional connection with the government creates a barrier between the government and the citizens, as such citizens resist change. Factors affect the formation of a person's attitude towards social problems. One's upbringing and family. Upbringing and family the most powerful source for formation of attitudes. The parents, siblings provide information about various things. For example, a child grown in a family having a patriarchal outlook, most probably used to have a prejudiced attitude towards women. 40. Beliefs and practices of their family. Family having orthodox thought, helped members to have an attitude of superstition, biasness based on caste, religion, tradition, etc. Also, an inculcated intolerance view towards other groups of people. Once circumstances in which a person is raised and lives, people who grow up poor have a whole different perspective of social problems than people who were raised in relative luxury and ease. Direct experience, a person who has faced racism in his life develops a negative attitude towards it. For example, Mahatma Gandhi being evicted from a train by a white man made him stand against apartheid policies. Education system. Education system cultivates habits of analytical and critical thinking on the prevalent social issues. It has shaped the attitude of common people to treat everyone with equality and abjure untouchability. However, too much information-oriented education has little scope for creativity, innovation and self-learning. Modern-day education also fails to inculcate moral values and discipline in the young minds that could enable them to become better and more responsible human beings. Changing behavior to make government programs successful. What needs to be done? Following can be done to change the behavior of Indian people. Cultural and societal conventions must be used in the campaign. For example, for successful implementation of Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, reference to our scriptures can be taken where women are worshipped as embodiments of Shakti. Reflection sessions, where government agents can pre-commit people to certain goals. For example, it can be used in Swachh Bharat Abhiyan where Swachhagrahis will pre-commit people to sanitation goals. Making people realize tangible outcomes by showing examples of people who have benefited from the program. Creating emotional connect between the citizens and the government's transparent communication and active engagement foster an emotional connect with citizens, building trust and a sense of shared responsibility for societal progress. Crimes against women. Recently, the National Commission for Women, NCW, informed that there was a rise of 46% in complaints of crimes against women in the first 8 months of 2021 over the corresponding period of last year. Reasons for sexual exploitation. Crime against women. Patriarchal society. Indian society has always been solidly patriarchal. Now, as women refuse to subscribe to traditional gender roles, as they seek to educate themselves, take up jobs outside the home, choose their own marriage partners, and as a result women face a patriarchal backlash. Attitudes. Across cultures, attitudes toward gender are likely to affect how male-female relationships are viewed, and subsequently how the sexual offenders and the victims are viewed. Challenge to social and political dominance of men. There is equality of all individuals before the law. The surge in attacks on women is an angry attempt by men to sustain the overwhelming social and political dominance they have long enjoyed, but the same is now challenged by modern notions of gender justice. Images portrayed by advertisements and in films, Bollywood films, aimed increasingly at a rapidly westernizing middle class, portray romance and desire as inevitable byproducts of contemporary life, creating a further sense of frustration among the unemployed young men who watch them. Lack of infrastructure of cities. The crumbling infrastructure of our cities also militates against women's safety. Streets lit dimly or not at all, bad or non-existent means of public transport, and incompetent and corrupt police form all contribute to the insecurity and vulnerability of women. Steps to correct crimes against women. Legal steps. Police should report every complaint related to females. Establishment of a special cell for women to make investigation process faster and more intense. A special manhunt drive on those under the lens. Make teams including women officers in each one of them and put them on patrolling in all sensitive areas. Run a 24/7 helpline and position teams such that they can reach anywhere in district instantly. 41. Prahaar redefined 3. Training to be given to women for self-defense. Social action, involvement of NGOs, social activists, women-friendly associations and district mass campaign to be launched towards gender sensitivity and equality. Concept of community policing with women policing. Public police relationship drive to rebuild the confidence of public. Motivational and inspirational talks. Advisory for hospitals for being of more sensitive towards rape victims. Moral policing. Moral police is a term used to describe vigilant groups which act to enforce a code of morality in society. They take law into their own hands and try to forcefully enforce discipline on people. For example, a youth in Kerala's Thrissur district was beaten to death by a mob after being found in the house of a woman. Why is it harmful? Leads to suppression of fundamental rights, particularly of vulnerable sections like women. As it is extrajudicial, it leads to anarchy, it leads to disturbance of social harmony and peace. Faith on law get deteriorated and intolerance index increases in society. Demand of instant justice rises. It can result in mob lynching and may prove disastrous for the society. Ways to stop. Improve policing and punish those who take law into their hands. Reforms in the criminal justice system are required in order to instill sensitivity and knowledge of constitutional values in the administration. Mass awareness campaigns to educate and remove people of their rigid biases and to accept change. Increase policing near sensitive areas during Valentine's Day, near pub areas, etc. where moral policing mostly happens. Community policing and volunteer groups to give support to people during sensitive times. This field helps us in understanding why a typical behavior in humans like racism, war, ethnic cleansing, terrorism, genocide, religious intolerance, etc. occur. According to social psychologists, human behavior is function of both person and the situation. Social influence. It refers to how individual thoughts, actions and feelings are influenced by social groups. It is a quality that can lead to changes in a person's actions, attitudes, and feelings as a result of interactions with other people in society. Ways in which individuals respond to social influences are: 1. Compliance. An individual is not fully convinced with the other person but shows agreement at the surface level. Example, in a conversation a person makes a racist comment. The other person is offended but says nothing. Here, the other person merely shows compliance. 2. Identify. In this case, an individual idolizes the other influential person. Example, a college student drinks Pepsi because his favorite celebrity endorses it. 42. Prahaar redefined 3.0. Ethic. 3. Internalize. Here two individuals share the same belief system. In the example made for compliance, if the other individual too makes racist comments, it is the case for internalization. Types of social influence. 1. Normative influence. An individual follows the crowd in order to be liked and accepted. By agreeing on common beliefs, values, attitudes and behavior, an individual increases his chance of acceptance and survival possibilities. 2. Informational influence. An individual goes along with the crowd because he thinks that crowd knows more than him. 2 types of situations produce informational influence. I. Ambiguous situations, when individuals don't know what to do. 2. Crisis situation, when an individual doesn't have time to think what to do. For egg, during stampede. Public spirit context. Odisha train accident. Citizens rush to hospitals to donate blood. Times the recent train accident in Odisha's Balasore district claimed almost 200 lives and caused many injuries to the people. Times apart from the doctors and other hospital staff who worked non-stop, the society also came to be as one of the helpers in the best way possible. Times the train accident has shown the humane side of villagers who queued up outside medical centers in large numbers to donate blood. Some civil society groups also chipped in for the noble cause. Times as a result of this action by the public, there was more blood than it was needed. Principles of social influence. 1. Reciprocity. People tend to give back what was received. or example, reciprocating smiles between individuals. 2. Consistency. Generally, people try to be consistent with their previous actions, opinions and assertions. 3. Social proof. People often decide what to do by looking at what similar others have done. 4. Liking. People are often influenced by those people whom they like. 5. Authority. People with power and authority tend to influence others. 6. Scarcity. Items and opportunities become more desirable when they are less accessible. For example, use of slogans like limited edition or last week for sale have immediate effect. Norms. These are group-held beliefs about how members should behave in a given context. These are informal understandings that govern society's behaviors. For example, touching feet in Indian society is considered as a sign of respect. Persuasion. It is an attempt to change a person's attitude. For example, Swachh Bharat mission focused on persuasion to change the behavior of people regarding cleanliness. Persuasion can also result in more submission and obedience. Persuasion refers to the process of changing the attitudes and behaviors of the target group towards some event, idea, object, or another person, in the intended direction, by using written or spoken words to convey information, feelings, or reasoning, etc. For example, small black square disclosing income to avoid tax evasion. Small black square Beti Bachao Beti Padhao to change the attitude of people towards girl students. Small black square Give It Up campaign to give up subsidy. Small black square celebration of Earth Day to persuade global citizen against climate change. Small black square encourage extremists to leave path of violence in northeastern and Naxal affected regions. 43. Prahaar redefined 3.0 Ethics. It is a receiver-centric exercise. It is not what the source says, it is what the receiver understands. 4 things are important in persuasion. Or the source, persuader, or the message or the audience or channel medium. Source credibility. A source can be credible because he is an expert and can be trusted. To access credibility, following things are important, i.e. or expertness, judged by the knowledge potential of source, or trustworthiness, judged by finding out whether the source has a vested interest. For example, Randeep Guleria, AIIMS director, a credible source, was seen on TV persuading people to take COVID-19 vaccine. Source likability. A source is likable if he is similar and attractive. There is an implicit assumption that attractive people are also intelligent. The primary factors that decide the attractiveness of the source include physical features, or communicative or versatility or attitudinal similarity. For example, advertisements rope in people with attractive personalities to make their products appealing. Power. It has the potential to change the behavior of the target group in the intended direction despite their resistance. Power, attractiveness and credibility will cause behavior change in different ways. Or power compliance or attractiveness identification or credibility internalization. TARES test acts as a guide for making and defending ethical choices. Test was developed by Baker and Martinson, 2001, to focus on 5 principles for ethical persuasion. This framework functions under the theory of utilitarianism, which maintains that the results of an action are equally important to the action itself when evaluating its ethicality. TARES is an acronym for truthfulness, of the message, authenticity, of the persuader, respect, for the persuadee, equity, of the persuasive appeal, and social responsibility, for the common good. Message in persuasion. Persuasion requires a message to be presented in vivid language and backed by data. The message should be such that it establishes a common ground with target people. For example, Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas slogan. Best results are obtained when the persuasive message has both emotional and factual elements in it. For example, selfie with daughters to promote Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao, government's message regarding lockdown during corona, and later for corona vaccine. Message discrepancy. It means the degree of inconsistency in the message the source should present to the target group. The message should be such that it should be within the zone of acceptance of the target group. 44. Prahaar redefined 3.0 Ethics. Emotional factor. Audience characteristics. Individuals are presented with logical arguments supported by relevant facts. They are likely to be persuaded. Intelligence refers to the information processing ability of an individual. Intelligent people, because of their superior critical thinking abilities, are less likely to be influenced by appeals that are illogical or not supported by relevant facts. However, when presented with appeals that have factual backing, they are likely to be convinced. Channel factor. Use the appropriate channel of communication. For example, use of street play is more effective to convey messages on social issues in the villages. Functions of persuasion. Weaken the current attitude. When the audience has a contrasting attitude, persuasion can help in making the audience less comfortable with the current attitude. Moral conditioning. Persuasion can bring change in the social attitude of people. For example, regular announcements to keep the station clean persuade people to change their behavior. Minimize resistance. When the audience has moderately opposed ideas, persuasion can move the audience towards neutrality. Change attitude. When the audience has no committed attitude, persuasion can help in changing the attitude. Intensify attitude. When the audience has the same attitude, persuasion can amplify the current attitude. Gain behavior. When the audience is strongly in sync with the persuader, the final objective is to make the audience act. Ways to resist persuasion. Attitude inoculation. Just like a person who has been exposed to a weak virus becomes resistant to a disease, similarly a person who has been exposed to counter-argument develops resistance to persuasion. Forewarned. When a person is being forewarned of persuasion attempts, he develops psychological reactance that motivates them to resist such attempts. Forewarning gives an opportunity to come up with counter-arguments. Boomerang effect. When a person develops a psychological reactance towards an attitude object, an attempt of persuasion is countered with equally strong response. Example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, medical staff were assaulted by the people as they had developed a negative attitude towards disease treatment. Stockpile, a healthy person who is well-read and is equipped with cognitive and social resources is able to resist persuasion better. How to make persuasion effective? Establish a positive rapport by establishing a common ground. Emphasize the advantages. Instead of trying to push for change, the persuader should point out the advantages. Storytelling. For thousands of years, we have been influenced by powerful stories. 45. Example, triumphs of truth in the Ramayana motivates us to speak truth only. Courage of Veer Kumbhar Singh at the age of 80 years while fighting against the British during the 1857 revolt endorsed the view of self-confidence to deal with any hardship. Turn objections into opportunities. Persuader should agree with the audience's objections and then illustrate them how it can be overcome with proposed changes. Commitment. Prospect should be persuaded to commit to small action first. Once committed, the prospect is most likely to agree to a larger idea. Strong feelings. Strong emotions can also be persuasive since they draw attention to themselves and stop listeners from coming up with reasons not to obey. Reciprocity. When the prospect does something, it should be rewarded for changed behavior attitude. Example, political party in power releasing jobs vacancy just before the elections. Bandwagon effect. It involves showing the target population the benefits which people have got by adopting the change. Scarcity. It involves letting people know what they are going to lose by not availing the opportunity. Lowballing. It is a persuasion technique in which a product is offered at a lower price than it is intended to be charged. Social influence. Peer pressure. It plays a very important role in attitude formation and change, removal of prejudice and group decision making. Praise. We are all made to feel special by praise. Do it more often. Example, with the praise of Lord Hanuman, he got encouraged to bring Sanjeevani from the hill. Administration and the public. Administration's attitude towards the masses. Wide cultural gap between the administrators and the masses, as the administrators largely come from upper middle class who deal with rural masses who are poor, and illiterate bureaucracy points that people are unaware of their rights. Administrators feel that people don't have adequate knowledge of rules and regulations. Civil servants complain that people try to pressurize them through politicians. They also complain that citizens don't cooperate with them to bring change in the society. Why are public officials not able to persuade the target group? The reason for this is the presence of certain barriers, semantics, psychological and physical barriers. If the public official can overcome those barriers, only then persuasion will be successful. Power is the potential to change the behavior of the target group in the intended direction despite their resistance. To overcome these barriers, district magistrate can use various influence tactics such as involving Sarpacha to overcome these barriers. Along with that, he/she must take feedback from the target audience to rectify any shortcomings. Public's attitude towards the administrators. Public complaints against the administrators regarding corruption, delay in disposal of cases, exploitation, favoritism, etc. Public is suspicious about the integrity of public officials. They feel that public officials are devoid of any human considerations. They create scope for middlemen who in turn exploit them. Way forward. How to improve the relationship between public and administration. Creating a public relations agency in the administration to serve as conduit between the public and the administration. C.P. Bambari. 46. Prahaar redefined 3.0, Ethics. Public should shed its negative role and adopt a positive role. Citizens' support and cooperation is essential for the success of any government program. In these times of rapid change, one of the major challenges of public administration is to adapt to changing situations. One of the defining features today, for example, is a constant pursuit of efficiency and efficacy in public expenditure. Administration should maintain constant contact with the public, especially those from the rural areas. Hota Committee, social audit, which involves auditing of the project from the beneficiaries. Increasing accessibility to civil servants by making public meetings compulsory. Government action only produces optimal results when it is based on trustworthy data and innovative capacity. Economic, social and security problems highlight the importance of policy as a tool for change and progress. E-governance, which helps in making the government reach the doorstep of the citizens. Citizens' Charter to make the citizens aware about the quality of service they receive and grievance redressal mechanism. Ethical issues in news. Supreme Court recognizes sex work as a profession. Context. The attitude of the police to sex workers is often brutal and violent. The Supreme Court's verdict: 1. Treat sex workers with dignity and prevent abuse, both verbal and physical. 2. Authorities have a duty to protect sex workers under the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, 1956. 3. Sensitize police and law enforcement agencies about the rights of sex workers. 4. Strictly enforce Section 354 CIPC, which criminalizes voyeurism, particularly against electronic media broadcasting photos of sex workers and their clients under the guise of rescue operations. 5. Conduct surveys of shelter homes by state governments to identify cases of adult women being unlawfully detained and expedite their release. 6. Organize workshops through legal services authorities to educate sex workers about their rights. The laptop protest by students against moral policing. Miscreants had allegedly cut off parts of a steel bench at a bus stop near the college to prevent boys and girls from sitting together. The next day, a group of students posted pictures of them sitting on each other's laps on social media, and the story went viral. Thus, the students protested at the lewd comments by the locals for sitting together. The attitude of both the students and the locals were reflected through their acts. Key terms. Terms meaning attitude, psychological tendency of evaluating a particular object either in favor or disfavor, behavior, way a person conducts oneself. Our behavior is largely shaped by our attitude. A positive attitude manifests in good behavior. Opinion, an individual's thoughts or beliefs about something, whether good or bad. It can vary from person to person. Belief, being certain about something that exists or is true. Prejudice, unreasonable dislike towards a particular person or a group of persons, and preferences, stereotype, preconceived notions about a specific group based on sex, gender identity, race and ethnicity, nationality, age, socioeconomic status, language, and so forth. Persuasion, an attempt to bring about a change in the attitude of a person. Key terms. 47. Prahaar redefined 3. Classical or Pavlovian conditioning, instrumental conditioning, observational learning, utilitarian instrumental function, volunteerism and social service, positive attitude, compassionate attitude, tolerance, proactive empathy, stereotypes and prejudices, anarchism, authoritarianism, communism, conservatism, liberalism, fascism, nazism, environmentalism, feminism, identity politics, normative informative influence, reciprocity, consistency. Previous year's questions. Previous year questions year. 1. Attitude is an important component that goes as input in the development of humans. How to build a suitable need for a public servant. 2021. 2. What do the following quotations mean to you? Every work has to pass through hundreds of difficulties before succeeding. Those that persevere will see the light, sooner or later. Swami Vivekananda. 2021. 3. A positive attitude is considered to be an essential characteristic of a civil servant who is often required to function under extreme stress. What contributes to a positive attitude in a person? 2020. 4. Hatred is destructive of a person's wisdom and conscience that can poison a nation's spirit. Do you agree with this view? Justify your answer. 2020. 5. What is meant by crisis of conscience? How does it manifest itself in the public domain? 2019. 6. With regard to the morality of actions, one view is that means is of paramount importance and the other view is that the ends justify the means. Which view do you think is more appropriate? Justify your answer. 2018. 7. Young people with ethical conduct are not willing to come forward to join active politics. Suggest steps to motivate them to come forward. 2017. 8. Without commonly shared and widely entrenched moral values and obligations, neither the law, nor democratic government, nor even the market economy will function properly. What do you understand by this statement? Explain with illustration in contemporary times. 2017. 9. How could social influence and persuasion contribute to the success of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan? 2016. 10. Our attitudes towards life, work, other people and society are generally shaped unconsciously by the family and the social surroundings in which we grow up. Some of these unconsciously acquired attitudes and values are often undesirable in the citizens of a modern democratic and egalitarian society. I. Discuss such undesirable values prevalent in today's educated Indians. B. How can such undesirable attitudes be changed and socio-ethical values considered necessary in public services be cultivated in the aspiring and serving civil servants? 2016. 11. Two different kinds of attitudes exhibited by public servants towards their work have been identified as bureaucratic attitudes and democratic attitudes. I. Distinguish between these two terms and write their merits and demerits. B. Is it possible to balance the two to create a better administration for the faster development of our country? 2015. 48. Prahaar redefined 3.0, Ethics. Chapter 3 Aptitude.